Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you back again today. We talk about health and nutrition, and we take you to the cutting edge. We take you all over the world with our camera crew, sometimes in studio, sometimes out on location. Now we're out on location. We're talking about dentistry, a natural approach. Well, who watching right now has not been affected by, let's say, cavities or plaque buildup or gingivitis or halitosis, or wondered, does this fluoride really protect my teeth, or does it cause any problems I don't know about? We cut through the politics. We get to the real science, and we do it all so it's understandable. Let's take a look now and see how we can be healthier in our mouths, and hence our whole body, with dentistry, a natural approach.
Long ago and far away, there was a time when doctors made what are called house calls. What that meant was that when you were sick, your doctor actually came to the house to see how you were. And those of you who are old enough to remember, think for a minute, what was the first thing he did when he got to see you in the house? He had you stick out his tongue. That's right. It's good you remembered. The reason he did that was he was checking the color. Now, in this country, we don't do things like that. It's too anti-American or anti-medicine or whatever. And we tend to forget that those kind of ways of treating the body have been around over 4,000 years. As a matter of fact, in Chinese medicine, they have textbooks out just on tongue diagnosis showing over 280 diseases that can be picked up by differences in the tongue. I just want to mention some very brief things that all of you should be aware of. If your tongue is white, it's usually a result of toxins coming out. If you know someone with a cold or a flu, have them stick out their tongue and you'll see it. It'll be white. If there are cracks in the tongue, it's usually a form of vitamin deficiencies. And if the tongue is a yellowish gray or a yellowish green, it's usually a gallbladder or liver problem. Whereas if you're brownish or grayish green, it's usually an intestinal or stomach problem. Now, with that as a given, think for a moment about the rest of the mouth. Again, the mouth is indicative of the body's general state of health. For instance, if you have a cavity, that's not the beginning of a problem, that's the end result of a problem. And the problem is that teeth are not these little rocks that are just embedded in bone in the mouth and you can go chomp, chomp, chomp all day long on anything. No. Teeth are more like a coral system where there's a crystal structure and minerals go in and out all the time.
I think that the major cause of dental problems and mouth problems was well established about 60 years ago when Weston Price wrote a famous book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. That was back in the 30s. At that time, he was a dentist who visited cultures all over the world and found that people's teeth, mouth, gums, and so on were in great shape until Western food was introduced. When white sugar and white flour was introduced into civilizations, people developed periodontal disease, cavities, their teeth fell out, all kinds of problems with their jaw and malocclusion. And I think this is the major problem. The nutrition in the United States and Western culture is the major cause of the dental problems.
Well, the reason we have the need for fillings, the deteriorating gums and teeth, is basically due to our diet. The changes in diet over the last 100 years have done a real good job of messing up our bodies, and the mouth is a barometer of the body's health, so the teeth are the first to go. When you got messed up teeth, you got something messed up in your body too.
If you are not eating properly, your body is becoming more acidic. The more acid your body gets, the more minerals are being pulled out of your mouth and into the rest of the body. When the minerals are being pulled out, the tooth itself is weakened. And as the tooth is weakened because of this acid environment, the acid-forming bacteria that are normally in your mouth in very small populations are booming. They're having the best time of their lives. And if you can picture your tooth being destroyed by 10 or 20 million crawly little bugs that are invisible to the naked eye, just eating it, you have a good idea of what exactly a cavity is. It's a mineral deficiency followed by a bacterial invasion that breaks down the crystalline structure of your tooth.
Thing that probably gives us the most trouble is sugar. They put sugar in many of the things we eat, so now we have sugar flavor or asparagus flavored sugar, green bean flavored sugar. There's a lot of sugar in the foods that we eat. And what sugar does is, I was taught in school that sugar sits on the tooth, drills a hole in it, and causes a cavity. Well, Dr. Steinman found out about 35 years ago that it's a systemic problem, that when you eat sugar, it changes the fluid flow that normally goes from inside the pulp chamber through the dentin, through the enamel, into the mouth, cleaning the tooth. But when you eat sugar, that turns around and the fluids from the mouth flow into the enamel, into the dentin, creating dental decay. So it's a matter of what you eat, what it does when you get it down in the body that creates the decay. Number 2 would be caffeine. We had caffeine obviously in coffee, in tea, not quite so obviously in chocolate. It's a very similar compound. It's theobromine. We get it in soft drinks. We get it in some of the pain medication that we take. And caffeine essentially does the same thing in turning that fluid flow around, making it go into the tooth. But this is a systemic problem. It changes the hormonal balance of the body to make that fluid flow go in, and that same imbalance creates a potential for many other diseases, the so-called degenerative diseases like arthritis and cataracts and multiple sclerosis. A lot of other things at least get set up for disease.
Our bites, our chewing motions are not geared towards a meat diet, but rather a high vegetable type diet with fruit. And those kind of foods will keep you in an alkaline state, which is a state of health. And with that, you also want to have some grains. You want to have root vegetables, some nuts, some seeds. But again, think of the basic pattern of human beings. That's the way we grew up. Our ancestors didn't get up in the morning and walk to McDonald's.
If we lived in the Garden of Eden, we wouldn't need supplements. But we don't, and the lifestyle that we have had for the last X number of years does not go away just because we get our fillings out or just because we get religion and we start eating right. We still have the problems there, the original problems that have disturbed some of our innate chemistries. And in order to straighten these out, in most people, you require some type of supplementation. And if we don't use it, we don't get the correction of the problem we're after.
Dental disease is the most common illness in America. It affects just about every individual, every citizen, and that's very unfortunate. One of the most interesting studies in dental health was done by Dr. Weston Price, a dentist in the 20s and 30s. And what he did was go to native cultures where the people ate their indigenous foods, which they'd consumed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And what he learned from that is when people ate foods that were natural to their environment, whole, simply prepared foods, their teeth were very healthy. They didn't have crowded or malformed teeth. As soon as westernized foods, primarily white flour, canned foods, white sugar, were introduced, the children born after that time had malocclusion, crowded teeth, dental disease. It was very interesting. Families where siblings were born prior to the introduction of the refined foods had healthy jaw development and healthy teeth. Children born afterwards had these dental problems. So if you want to maintain or improve your dental health, look to whole natural foods first of all. Consume everything in as pure and unprocessed a state as you can possibly get it. Unfortunately, in our modern age, we're subjected to a lot of stress, a lot of chemical exposure, and unfortunately, most of our foods are shipped long distances, and so they lose a lot of their nutrients. So most people should be taking a good supplemental program. For dental health, you want to take as a basic insurance an excellent multiple vitamin, and in your natural food store you'll find an excellent selection. Also recommended would be a good 800 to 1500 depending on your age, sex, and the point in your life. If you're pregnant or nursing, it should be 1500. Children and men, 800 usually. And for many individuals, especially those who may be allergic to dairy products, that means a calcium supplement. We have many excellent ones on the market that are synergistically designed with cofactors so that you really can deposit those minerals in your bones for healthy bones and strong teeth. Also, you want to take a good stress B complex, which keeps your energy level really good and helps your body to utilize the nutrients that you consume. Folic acid is very important not only for dental health, but also the healthy functioning of our nervous system and many other systems in the body. It's particularly important for pregnant women as it's been shown to prevent neural tube damage. CoQ10 oxygenates the cells, very important for dental health. Vitamin C helps to keep our gums healthy and strong. If you're living in a city or under stress, at least 6,000 milligrams a day is recommended. And then mineral supplement. This one is a very nice one that is from food-grown nutrients, nicely and synergistically formulated so the body can actually utilize it very efficiently. And a good multiple is always the basis of any supplement program. Juices are a wonderful way to get more vegetables and produce into your diet. A lot of people have great difficulty consuming the recommended 5 vegetables a day, but it's easy to consume them if you juice them. Particularly good for dental health is carrot juice, which is extraordinarily high in calcium. A 12-ounce glass can contain as much as 600 milligrams of calcium, so that's an excellent supplement for those who may be allergic to dairy products. Also, the green leafy vegetables are excellent sources of calcium, and I'm personally convinced that they make your teeth whiter. Used to be in the old days, a girl was recommended to eat a pile of kale every day for nice, beautiful white teeth, and it's not a bad recommendation. If you can't stand doing it that way, try mixing it in juice with carrot juice, some kale, some parsley. If you don't like the carrot juice, try it in apple, maybe with a little lemon and kale, or a little bit of orange juice in there also. It's a delicious way to ensure your dental health.
There have been startling new discoveries of old research suggesting that root canals may in fact trigger and contribute to diseases all over the body.
The notion of root canals is exciting. One has a tooth that's decayed to the point that the pulp cavity has been entered and the nerve is infected and it dies. And usually the tooth would die and have to be lost.
The good part, before we get into the problem part, the good part of root canals is it's a way of saving your teeth. And what's been done is that the decay is cleaned out, the nerve of the tooth, or what's left of the nerve is cleaned out, because in many instances, when you have a bacterial infection from the decay into the nerve literally dissolves and that canal is just filled with pus. That's all cleaned out. And then a filling material is placed in it, which is called gutta percha, and is basically made from tree resin, and it's quite innocuous, and that saves the tooth. So many people have had root canals in this country, as I'm sure many of you listening to this have had, or watching this, and life continues.
Unfortunately, Dr. Price 60 years ago demonstrated that the structure of the tooth under the microscope has thousands and thousands of tiny tubules that go from the inside to the outside, and that when the tooth was infected, bacteria could get into those tubules. They would stay there. Antibiotics can't reach them, but they live and produce toxins, and those toxins get into the system and produce far-flung diseases. The studies were dramatic.
He took teeth that had root canal fillings, ground them up, sterilized them, and then took some powder from them and placed them under the skin of the rabbits. What happened was quite fascinating, if you like. Anyone who had arthritis, the rabbits got arthritis. Anyone who had heart disease, the rabbits got heart disease. He concluded from that not only were the teeth non-sterile, but the bacteria were coming out and were mutating in the body and going to other areas and causing all kinds of problems. This research was suppressed until just a few years ago when this book came out called The Root Canal Cover-Up.
We have found on root canal teeth that there are certain diseases that can be initiated by the root canal tooth. And so the question comes up, well, what should you fill the root canal with? The answer is it doesn't really make any difference what you embalm it with. The tooth is still dead. So what happens is in any procedure in doing a root canal, you're going to get a few bacteria down in the dentin tubules. You've got a tooth and you got the pulp chamber in the middle of it. Then the whole root is made of these little tiny garden hoses, which are called the dentin. So there is a flow from the pulp chamber clear out to the outside of the tooth. Where we are finding the problems is on the outside of the tooth. If we remove a tooth and check what is on the periodontal ligament, which is the outside of the tooth, we have found toxins there that have never been identified in biology or toxicology or medicine before. And one of the most toxic substances we have on the planet is botulism. All right, botulism and this substance have a lot of similarity. Botulism is in the dirt worldwide. You can take a handful of dirt and eat it and it doesn't kill you. But you take that same botulism and put it in a can and seal it up, as in canned foods. That's what's called an anaerobic environment, an environment without oxygen. In the absence of oxygen, these bugs do not die. They convert to another type of bug that can live in the absence of oxygen, and its waste product changes. The waste product of botulism is one of the most toxic substances known to mankind, but something more than 1,000 times more toxic than botulism is the material that's on the outside of the root canal, to the point that it takes just a few molecules to create damage. So every time you bite down, a few molecules are going out into the bloodstream.
The problem that we run into is that the bacteria that are also in the root canal go into the dental tubules, and we cannot mechanically clean that out. And those bacteria stay in there, and according to theory, release toxins that go through the tooth and again into the bloodstream. Now, I've been researching this. I got interested in this because in the old research it showed that 30% of people did not have any problems because they had strong immune systems. And I've written another book called The Natural Dentist, which should be out this spring. And one of the publishers who looked at that called me up and said, would you be interested in doing the research on this? And I said yes, because of particularly that immune system tie-in. What struck me as important was we've been talking about nutrition, we've been talking about ways of cleaning up our act. By strengthening our immune system, this problem should also be largely eliminated. However, what I'm also finding out now is other dentists are reporting to me, particularly in people who have cancer, that their therapies work much better when the root canal teeth are taken out.
50 years ago, children in Grand Rapids, Michigan shared an all too common statistic. 99% of them experienced tooth decay. But in 1945, that changed forever when the city voluntarily adjusted its municipal water supply to the optimal fluoridation level.
Fluoride is a poison. It's licensed as a pesticide. It is very effective in getting rid of rats and rodents and other kind of insects. And because it's so toxic, dentists have discovered that scrubbing your teeth down with it, that it kills the bugs on the teeth. And so, sure, it'll reduce tooth decay, but many other substances like salt and baking soda will too.
Fluoride is a toxic substance. It is, on a weight-to-weight basis, more toxic than lead, and the general public does not know this. Fluoride is a carcinogenic agent. That is, it causes cancer. It's immune suppressive. It damages the immune system. It causes dental fluorosis, which is in ugly white spots on the teeth, and patients, pediatricians, and dentists frequently don't even know what causes it. They usually blame it on patient getting antibiotics, when in fact it's actually dental fluorosis. So fluoride in the water supply, it's 1 part per million. In toothpaste, it's 1,000 parts per million, and in the dental rinses that the dentists supply, it's 10,000 parts per million. We find that this is very damaging to people's health, and one of the first things that we do, especially with children who are on, for example, fluoride tablets, is we take them off that. We frequently find children with recurrent infections, such as ear infections, are taking fluoride vitamins. And when we take them off that, this is one of the things that will help them to overcome this medical problem.
There are 5 really good reasons why you should not use fluoride in your vitamins or your toothpaste or even in your water. It's linked to cancers. It causes an increase in hip fractures. It means it poisons the bones, makes them break more easily. It causes a poisoning in children so that the teeth end up with little white spots on them or even brown. It's a first visible sign of fluoride poisoning called fluorosis. It doesn't reduce tooth decay at all in the water, and that it's not approved by the Food and Drug Administration as either safe or effective.
Approximately 50% of all Americans drink fluoridated water, and 42 of the 50 major cities in the U.S. are fluoridated.
Water fluoridation has been promoted for the last 50 years, ostensibly to reduce tooth decay in this nation. In the largest study ever conducted in this country of 39,000 school children in 84 different cities, they found there was 0 statistically significant difference between the tooth decay rates in partially fluoridated cities, totally fluoridated cities, and unfluoridated cities. In fact, the children with the fewest cavities in Butler, Kansas, was an unfluoridated city.
Well, the decision to inculcate the American people with the consciousness that fluoride is not an environmental pollutant, which it is, and instead is something that is necessary and good, goes back to the 40s. In the 40s, the American Dental Association and the American Medical Association both had editorials in their major journals saying that fluoride is a severe toxin and should be removed and should be kept down in the environment. Around that time, the aluminum companies, Alcoa for example, was being sued for the killing of livestock and damaging plants. And the father of public relations, Edward Bernays, who was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, came up with the idea of changing the American consciousness about fluoride and used an obscure study to try to sell the public that fluoride was not only not toxic, but it was necessary to help prevent dental caries. And a whole series of situations occurred at that time which resulted in gradually the total acceptance of fluoride. The fact is that the economic motivation behind fluoride and fluoridation is not the millions of dollars that are made on the selling of fluoride products, but the billions of dollars that are saved by companies which would be necessary in order to clean up the environment, to remove the environmental toxin fluoride from the environment.
Fluoride is a political issue. It's not a scientific issue. Many companies have fluoride to get rid of, and so loose standards on fluoride benefit industry. Are you willing to use your body as a hazardous waste disposal dump?
Today, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 134 million Americans are served by water supplies where the fluoride concentration has been adjusted to an optimal level.
We still have fluoride in the water supply because of what's called a massive cover-up. There are not one, not two, but several smoking guns that have not been well covered. In 1977, former executive for the National Cancer Institute demonstrated a 5% increase in overall cancer deaths in fluoridated communities. Congress ordered the same people who have been recommending fluoridation to test fluoride for carcinogenicity. It's kind of like setting a fox to watch the henhouse. Their results weren't reported out until 1990, and then every single cancer that was discovered was changed.
Dr. William Marcos, a senior science advisor in the EPA's Office of Drinking Water, blows the whistle on the undermining of fluoride studies ordered by Congress.
Well, the studies that were done by Battelle North, I think it's Battelle Northwest, show that there was an increased level of bone cancer and other kinds of cancer in the animals. And I got a hold of the contractor report and reviewed it very carefully. And not only was it reporting cancers in the animals, osteosarcomas. I went to a meeting that was held in Research Triangle Park in April of 1990, the latter part of April, in which the National Toxicology Program was presenting their review of the study. Then at the meeting, every one of the cancers that was reported by the contractor had been downgraded by the National Toxicology Program. Now, I've been in the toxicology business looking at studies of this nature for nearly 25 years. And I've never seen that. Never ever seen where every single endpoint that was a cancer endpoint had been downgraded. I'd seen one or two endpoints argued over, usually on the definition of what is a cancer in that particular tissue. But I've never seen every one of them downgraded. I found that very suspicious, and I went to see an investigator in the Congress at the suggestion of my friend Bob Carton. And this gentleman and his staff investigated very thoroughly and found out that the scientists at the National Toxicology Program down at Research Triangle Park had been coerced to change their findings.
Many scientists on the inside of the EPA have been trying their very best to tell us about fluoride. Dr. William Marcus sacrificed his career at the EPA by sending what it's called the Mayday Memo, where he called to question the changes of the cancer diagnosis made by the Public Health Department. Dr. Marcus got his job back, and he won a whistleblower's lawsuit with punitive damages against the EPA for his unlawful firing. He's trying to tell you something. Fluoride's a carcinogen.
Well, there we have it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next week sharing more on health and nutrition. I'm Gary Null. Have a great week, everyone.